Okay, so arguably Django's greatest flaw is that it just has like no story around front end. This means that things like, just using React or Tailwind or things that sort of like get taken for granted in other frameworks just don't have a default sort of out-of-the-box solution for Django. And today I am going to share sort of what I think is the best way to bring that modern front-end practice into Django, which is bringing in Vite into your project. And I will show you how to bring that in and set up Tailwind CSS and maybe React as well. And I'll try to explain it with a little bit of theory as well, just sort of like explaining what we're doing so you're not just kind of blindly typing keystrokes into a screen. Okay, so before we get into any of the details, I wanted to kind of just give like a 1,000-foot overview of what we're going to end up building. And so basically, we're going to have a normal Django project here. This Django project is going to have views and templates and everything else. Then kind of to the side of Django, we're going to have this whole like JavaScript environment. This JavaScript environment is going to be managed by a build tool called Vite. Behind the scenes, it'll be using npm to install stuff, and it'll be using something called ES build, which is something that can sort of deal with different flavors and syntaxes of various front-end things and turn them into JavaScript files that browsers know how to work with. So we're going to build this sort of like front-end area over here. We're going to configure it so that it works with our Django static file system. And then we'll be able to sort of do whatever we want in front-end land and have it all work normally in Django land. So let's get started by first just setting up our basic Django project. Okay, so we're going to start with like a totally blank canvas. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory for our work. So I'm just going to do something like make something like that, okay? And we can go into there. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to like initialize a new Python project with UV. So I'm going to run UV init. This will create a project in here, a main.py, a pyproject.toml, and a readme. And next we're going to add Django to our project. So we can do UV add Django, which will install Django and its dependencies. And then we're just going to start a new Django project. So we can do UV run Django admin, start project, my site, and we'll just do it in the local directory. Okay. So that has now created our manage.py file, as well as our my site file here with our settings, URLs, and so forth. And just to confirm that this is working, we can do uv run manage.py run server. And if we load that up, then we have our fresh Django project. Okay, we're getting an error about database migration, so let's just run this manage.py migrate just to make this happy. Okay. And now when we run server, we shouldn't see that error anymore. So this is just our sort of totally normal Django bare bones project with nothing in it. Okay, so now that that's done, we can go ahead and set up the JavaScript side of the house, essentially this area here that I talked about. And so we'll first do that by initializing a new npm project, just like we did with our UV command, and this will create this package.json file, which npm uses to sort of like keep track. It's basically the pyproject.toml of JavaScript. And then we can add our first dependency, and we'll do npm install development mode Vite. And what this will do is install Vite and add it to our development dependencies. So if you look in the package.json file now, you'll see this Vite has been added to our dev dependencies. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to go to this like laying out the project section of this guide. And so basically what we're going to end up with is this like assets area where we're going to have like JavaScript and styles. And this is where we're going to do all of our sort of front end development. And then the rest of this will be like our standard Django stuff with our our site directory, our static directory, our templates directory, and so forth. So let's go ahead and set up our front end area. So the first thing we can do to set that up is we can make a folder in here called assets, and then we can make another folder in there called JS, and maybe just for kicks we'll also make a folder in there for our CSS, which we'll use later. And inside this JS folder, we can go ahead and make an index.js file and give it these contents here. And so all this is doing is creating a div, sticking hello Vite inside that div, and then appending it to the body of the document. And so if this JavaScript runs successfully, then it'll just print out hello Vite in a template. The next thing we need to do is set up our Vite config file. So I will create that file, the root of the repo, Vite config, and give it these contents. I'm not sure how much of this to walk through right now. Yeah, we'll go through this as we need it. But for now, we're going to move on. And I'm going to go back to package.json, and I'm going to add this Vite build script here. And I'm going to get rid of this test script. And now we should be able to do npm run builds. And it didn't work because it didn't find our file because we put it in a subfolder. So let's fix that. Thank you, cursor. Okay, so what we can see now is that this build function has created two files for us. It has created this manifest file, which we can have a look at. And this is basically, you can think of this as like a map. So the source is like the relative path in our assets directory. So that's like js index.js here. And then, or sorry, the source, assets js index.js. And then the file is the output path, which in this case was index bundle. And the reason it was index bundle is because we configured it to, if it is a JavaScript file, then save the output path to JS bundle. And the reason it ends up in our static directory is because of this bit here, which says to put the all the output files in a static directory relative to this config file. This base/static will come into play in a little bit. For now, don't worry about it. I guess now that we're almost walking through this entire thing, I'll say, so yeah, so this empty out directory makes it so that Vite won't destroy anything else we have in the static directory. So if you've got stuff that is not part of your front-end pipeline, just like images that are being served from Django templates, Vite won't delete those. That's what this empty out directory false setting does. And yeah, I think that kind of covers everything that is in here. Okay, so next we are going to wire this up to Django. To do that, we are going to do a few things. Let's first make a templates directory. I like to put all my templates in kind of the root of my project. So I'll create a folder here for templates. And then in here, we can make a hello Vite file. And we can give it these contents. And then in our root URL conf here, we're just going to drop that in as well. Need this import. I don't think this thing knows about our Python environment. Let's fix that real quick. Python interpreter. There. Oh, come on. You should know what a template view is. Fine. Let's just let the AI figure it out if the IDE can't figure it out. Okay, so we have our hello Vite file. which is including our bundle file, which is a rendered version of this thing, which says hello Vite. And so if we go back here and we try to go to hello Vite, it doesn't know about our template directory because we haven't told it that that's a template directory. So let's go into our settings and add there. So that will just tell Django to look for templates also in that templates folder. And now if we go here, did it work? Did not find our index bundle file. Why didn't it find? Oh, because we also need to configure our static directories. There we go. And hello Vite. It works. So to summarize, we are now using Vite to build that JavaScript file over here. It's going through the pipeline. It's landing in a static directory. It's being served in a Django template, and we have hello world. Cool. Okay, so this is basically exactly how everything's going to work in production. Vite's going to build our stuff, and we'll serve it as static files. In development, it's kind of painful to have to run this like npm run build command every time that we change anything in our front end. And so in development, we actually are going to change our setup a little bit, and we're going to use something called hot module replacement, or HMR, and a library called django-vite to handle that. So HMR, you don't really need to know how HMR works. Basically what it is it's like magic stuff that detects when something changed in the source files and then automatically updates your browser to use it. Vite, in addition to being this like build thing, is also a development server that you can use to serve your applications. And HMR is built into Vite's development server. And so basically what we want to do is we want to do something like this, where if we say, if we're in development mode, load our JavaScript file from Vite's dev server, otherwise use the build version that it will be served by Django static files. And this is basically what is built into this library called django-vite. So django-vite provides this Vite asset template tag that we can use instead of our static tag, and it will essentially allow us to add this logic to our app. So let's walk through how this works. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install django-vite. We will do it with uv, so we'll do uv add django-vite. And that will add the library to our pyproject.toml, and we'll add it to our installed apps. Check it at the end here. And we have already set up our Vite config, so I don't think we need to do anything there. And we can go ahead and add a django-vite config to our settings. I'll just check that at the bottom. And I think we've already set up static files, so we should be good to go. So now instead of loading our index file from the Django static template tag, we're going to use the django-vite template tag to use this Vite asset thing. So let's go ahead and make that update to our templates. And we're also going to add this Vite HMR client tag, which is just this magic incantation that initializes Vite's HMR for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And then the last thing we need to do is in our package.json file, we need a dev command like that, which will run the Vite dev server for us. So now we should be able to go back to our project and run npm run dev to start the Vite development server. And this will load our Vite. And now you can see the where this static thing comes into play. So this base static, we set this up to match the static URL in Django. And this is so that Django will try to reference things from the static endpoints in development, and so Vite just like serves all its stuff there. So now that that is running, we should be able to reload our server, which died. And it died because we haven't set a static root. So let's go ahead and do that. I think django-vite needs this to be set in order to run essentially, but this will be like your sort of like built static directory where Vite assets will go. And now if we run server again, it should work. And we are still getting a 404, and we are probably getting a 404 because of something dumb like using a different path than, yeah, so we put this in a subpath. So if we update that, then we get hello Vite. And now for the big payoff, we'll go into split screen mode here. And so now you can see HMR in action. So if I just make this a little bit wider, then we can say like, hello Vite with HMR. And we can see that updating in our browser automatically as we make changes. Cool. So yeah, so for a long time, I was totally happy just like refreshing my page every time I made a change. But it's so easy to set up now. I mean, we did this in what, just like a couple minutes, that I think it's totally worth it. And this starts to pay off a lot more when you're sort of having more complex JavaScript environments and tweaking your styles and other things. Being able to see those changes reflected instantly in your page is pretty nice. Okay, so that is HMR. The next thing we might want to do is add React to our project. The guide has this sort of section about just adding regular JavaScript libraries like Lodash. We're going to skip over that and jump down to the React section, and we're going to get started. So for these Vite things that we need to set up that require some sort of tooling to understand, there's usually two parts to the setup. The first is the plugin. So the plugin is something that tells Vite how to work with your files. In this case, it tells Vite how to handle JSX, which is not something that is normal JavaScript. And in addition to the plugin support, there's the library itself. So let's first go ahead and get started by adding the plugin to our app. So we can just kill our server and run that. And then we'll go ahead and update our Vite config file to import the plugin and add it to the config. Add that there and add the plugin there. So the next thing we are going to do is actually install React itself. So we're going to run that install command. And this will add React, there it is, to our dependencies of our package.json, as opposed to the dev dependencies there. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new JSX file in order to put our React thing in. So let's create that file under our JavaScript assets, and we're just going to paste in this contents here. So this is basically just another hello world application. The main interesting thing is that it's using this JSX syntax. You can see in the render here, that is JSX, that is not legal JavaScript. And the Vite plugin is what's allowing us to use that syntax. So we are going to take this, and then the next step will be to hook up the new file we've added into our Vite config so that Vite knows how to build it. We'll add it as a new line there. And then we have to update our Django template. So we can go ahead and open that up and update that file reference. And I think that should be it. So now we can go ahead and reload the page, and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because we are not running our server. So let's go ahead and start that up. There we go. And now, oh, right. So React renders into a root element there, which we forgot to add to our page. So So we can go back into our Django template and we can add that div for React to insert itself into. And now, hopefully, hello React. Cool. So now we've got React integrated into our project, and we can go back to split screen mode, confirm that our HMR is working. Oops. And it appears to be, which is nice. Alrighty. So another thing we might want to set up in this project is Tailwind CSS. So let's look at how that works, and it's going to be very similar to our React setup. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to kill that server, and then we're going to install the plugin, and then we're going to similarly import the plugin and add it to our list here, like so. And then once again, we need to also install like the library itself. So let's do that. And we need to create a CSS file for it. Make that a little bit bigger. And let's go into our styles, and now we can just make like a style.css file, and we can do import Tailwind CSS like that. And that will just kind of do everything you need in order to use Tailwind in your project. The last thing we need to do is update our build config, our Vite config file, to be able to build this style sheet. And so we'll add one more thing here for our styles. We put it in a slightly different place. And then we also need to tell it how to build CSS in addition to JavaScript. And now if we run our dev server again, we should be building Tailwind. And we can test that by adding the Vite asset tag to our templates. Fixing the path. And now let's try using a class here like not indigo. Everything in Tailwind has to be purple. And did it work? Yes, it did. So yeah, now we are using Tailwind. We can use it here in our Django templates. We can also use it in our React templates. Let's text Excel sounds good. And yeah, so now we have a Django project with React, with Tailwind. We can do all sorts of modern front-endy things, and we are in a great position to use this in development and production. So I hope that was helpful. There is a guide that I will put a link to in the description that runs through all of this stuff in more detail. And there's also an open source repository where you can just kind of start with the end state with Django, Vite, Tailwind, and React all set up for you. So I'll put those links in the description. I'll also just quickly mention that if you want a more advanced Django setup with all of this stuff configured, as well as tons of features built in, auth, billing, multi-tenancy, all sorts of other stuff, you can check out my Django SaaS starter kit, SaaS Pegasus, and I'll put a link to that in the description as well. Thanks for stopping by.